Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And Logan, the Boston Celtics have life. They just took Game 5 in a pretty definitive fashion on their home floor, now down just 3-2 against the Heat. What did you take away from this game?
It's going to be tough to finish this thing out for Miami, man. Like you said, we saw a lot of life from Boston. From the jump, Miami gets smacked in the mouth in the first quarter. Slack-jawed. A clean, open hand smack right to the face, and it's hard to come back from that, man. The Celtics got into rhythm early with a lot of great defensive plays, easy transition offense, and it's really hard to bounce back from that, man. Boston wins a lot of the categories in this game today, man. You talk about the hustle categories. They win on the glass 10-7 on offensive boards, second chance points 17-2. They forced 16 turnovers and turned the ball over just 9 times. And I thought, that's where we can start. Great defense from Boston tonight from the tip to the end of this game, getting into passing lanes, getting up on ball handlers. And that was the biggest difference to me in this game from games previous in this entire series. They were up in the ball handlers' mouths for Miami. Like, they were making life really difficult on them, swarming them, trying to limit as many drives as they can. And then, of course, what's one of the biggest keys, Celtics keys to victory every single night? It's shooting the lights out. They are 38-2, as they said on the broadcast, when they shoot 40% or better. They are 44-10 on this season when they make 15 or more three-pointers. So there is a little bit of concern that I have for Miami, man. You need superhuman Jimmy. In games 3 and 4, he's 22-9-6 on 41, 20, 84 splits. We need superhuman Jimmy, Carson. We need Jimmy to be unequivocally the best player on the floor. I think that's something that's been understated throughout these playoffs. It's something that we've touched on, but it took best player in the world heroics to beat Milwaukee, right? It took Jimmy turning it up in certain games and situations against the Knicks. We're going to need to see superhuman Jimmy in 6 or 7 for Miami to get this done, especially when you have such a lack of offensive creation. I think Bam has to be better. He has 6 turnovers in this game. He was aggressive in certain spots, but not early in this game. I need to see Bam be more physical. He has to be the number 2 with the lack of offensive creators here. And no Gabe Vincent in this game. It's Gabe Vincent. I think a lot of, I don't want to say casual fans, but a lot of people who don't keep up with the playoffs, Gabe Vincent has been huge and instrumental in this run, as have the rest of the role players. But Gabe Vincent in particularly, in this series, 18 points per game in this series, Carson. He is 46% on pull-up jumpers in these playoffs, 42% on pull-up threes. For a team that, like Miami, that is depleted offensively, no Tyler Hero, no Victor Oladipo, you need guys like that, and that's a huge blow for them in a game like this. And I don't know, man. I'm worried about Miami with Kyle Lowry getting so much burn, Carson. I thought he was a really weak point on this team, especially early. You get some bad turnovers for him where that little jump shot into a pass that has been so effective for Lowry throughout this series. He kicks it off to Bam, catches it back, hits a little mid-range jumper. Some bad turnovers early off of that where he's just giving it to Boston Celtics players. I thought they did a really good job of controlling him and making sure he couldn't penetrate the paint at all. Miami is at a lack of guys who can get downhill. He's stripped by Smart. Grant Williams is clamping him up. I think that's where my biggest concern is with Miami moving forward, Carson, is with injuries. And now with Gabe Vincent potentially out, you're really relying on Kyle Lowry. There's no one who can really get downhill on these guys. And then on that, I thought Boston attacked the biggest key that we hit on at the start of this series, Carson, with a lack of really good point-of-attack perimeter defenders where you can be really physical with. I thought throughout this game, Boston did a phenomenal job in the half court of attacking downhill. Now, obviously, it's going to be easier when your three-point shot is falling the way it was for Boston early in this game. Everyone is hitting. Miami has to respect that a little more. They have to close out hard, which opens up more opportunities for Boston to attack downhill, but I thought they did a phenomenal job, and it's something that I think they need to do in Game 6 especially. If the shot is falling, if it's not, get all your guys to attack downhill. I thought they did a phenomenal job of attacking the undersized, under-athletic Miami defenders that they haven't been doing all series. Tatum's getting downhill. Brown, Marcus Smart, Derek White, even Grant Williams is getting downhill on guys like Strus, like Vincent, like Duncan Robinson. This felt like the game that we predicted long ago. The game that this is how I expected the majority of this series to play out, if I'm being honest with you. We finally see Boston play up their potential. and Miami doesn't. Miami loses all the hustle categories. This is the kind of game that you can expect to see when Miami's not winning all of those hustle categories. That is imperative to them winning games. So I thought Boston just really attacked. They played harder. They hit on keys that they need to hit on. Tatum being great at the start of this game, them attacking mismatches and out hustling them. But this is a real uphill battle, I think, for Miami, man. I mean, I don't expect Boston to play like this every single night, but Miami really is at a lack of offensive creators, and I thought that stuck out like a sore thumb in this game. Really bad, especially, without Gabe Vincent.
It's just so funny that you say that you don't expect Boston to play like this every night, because neither do I. And obviously we saw the product that they put forth in the first 3 games of this series. But what we have always known is they are capable of playing like this on any night. And their best punch is the best in the league. And so it is huge that they have been able to find that level of intensity and of purpose on both sides of the ball, because they look significantly better than Miami right now. And I completely agree with you on the significance of Gabe Vincent going down. He is Miami's 3rd best player, and his level of shot making and playmaking, being just another high IQ shooter out there, is really important for a team that is struggling in those capacities, especially when Jimmy is limited in this game. And I thought that we saw the Celtics guard him pretty well. I think more Tatum on Jimmy is a challenge for him. Again, an athlete of that size with that kind of length. Jimmy was not getting the kind of easy switch hunting in this game that he has overall in this series. I also thought Robert Williams playing less drop and doing more outright switching in this game. We saw him present a lot of problems, because against Kyle Lowry, for example, when instead of just conceding him a pull-up jumper out of drop, now you're putting a big athletic guy in front of him, it's not easy for him to get by that guy. And when Robert Williams has that monstrous block on a Jimmy Butler 3, you see the effect that his length has. And then I also thought that they defended Bam better in this game, even though he ends up with his, I believe it was 24. You mentioned the 6 turnovers. I thought that they were giving him more variety, throwing more doubles at him, more aggressive help. We've seen them very content to sort of let Bam go to work in single coverage in this series, and I thought that he was rattled and affected by some of that. So you have some of those specific adjustments, but most importantly, it's exactly what you laid out. And it's the reason that they won Game 4. They've been engaged. They've shown fight. They've been consistently giving top tier effort, which is far from a guarantee with Boston. But the key in the first half to me, I mean, sure, they come out shooting the hell out of the ball, and Tatum is displaying big time shot making, and he's getting downhill. And so you're seeing the skill ceiling that they have. But even more importantly, you're seeing the effort ceiling with the level of constant ball pressure that they were applying, forcing Miami into an uncharacteristic amount of turnovers, 6 in that first quarter. And also with the level of aggression that they had on the offensive glass. They win the first half 13-0 in second chance points. So you can take every other difference, the turnovers and the gap in shot making, and that is pretty much the reason that instead of being a close game, this was a blowout in that first half. And Boston just remained comfortably in front throughout, because once they built that lead, Miami didn't have the firepower to come back in this one. I do think the defensive effort stands out from Boston, because the shooting was always going to swing, right? They shoot 29% from deep over their first 3 games for one of the best shooting teams in the league, who does so at such a high volume with so many capable shooters on the floor at all times. That number was never going to hold, and these last 2 games have been explosions from them. But it's not just that they forced 16 turnovers, Logan. They had 13 steals in this game. So those are the most valuable kind of turnovers you can have, right? Because that means you are actively getting out into transition, and they got 27 points off turnovers, which is an astronomical number, especially against a Miami Heat team that is usually so disciplined, so tight with the ball, so composed offensively. And Boston was blowing up everything, man. They were jumping passing lanes on just sort of casual passes to get in offensive actions. They were getting steals out of handoffs. It just felt like a different team, dude. Jaylen Brown was awesome. I mean, he actually found his jump shot, which was huge, because he had been abysmal in games 1 through 4 as a jump shooter. But athletically, you see him out in transition, defensively making plays like that. Obviously, you have a massive shooting night from Derek White, who remains one of the best role players in the league. Horford is playing significantly better, fighting on the glass, engaged defensively, actually capable of making shots these last 2 games. Robert Williams, we mentioned, not being exploited nearly as much for some of his spacing limitations or defensive rigidity. So it just feels like all of a sudden, after getting the worst version of Boston and the best version of Miami for 3 games, things have flipped and we're getting this incredible, like, world beater buzzsaw version of Boston. And Miami just has not been able to reach that same level. And I am worried about the Gabe Vincent injury. So what's your feel on where this is headed right now? Like, Miami's going back home for game 6, obviously. What can they do to turn the tides back in their favor? And how likely is it that they actually do?
I don't know how likely it is. That's the best question. I mean, it is weird to me, Carson, that it seems like it always takes Boston's back being up against the wall for them to show up like this. They're 4-0 in elimination games in these playoffs. In their last 8 elimination games, they're 7-1. It just goes hand in hand. I don't know what it is about them being cornered like a scared animal, but when they are cornered, they turn it on, and you get this ferocious beast that comes out of Boston that I just wish we could see every night because we could crown them now. But it's going to be tough, one, because Boston certainly has all of the momentum, right? And there is a little bit of pressure, right, Carson? Like, we're not going to talk about it because it's never happened before. Not in the sport of basketball. We've seen it in baseball. We've seen it in NHL. In an ironic twist of fate, you'd figure the team that's up 3-0, the team that's up 3-1 can play loosey-goosey, that it's almost in the bag now. But in an ironic twist of fate, you're seeing that the pressure cooker's cooking Miami a little bit now because it's like, if we drop this game, we have to travel back to Boston, where admittedly Boston has been the worst playoff team on their home floor, which is a little bit of an advantage, but that's a raucous place to play. Miami's no cupcake either, right? Game 6 is going to be, I think, down to the wire. I think you are going to get the best 2 versions of these teams where they are firing on all cylinders. They are giving full effort. But the pressure's on Miami now because Boston, again, ironically, while their backs are against the wall, it's 3-0. It's never happened before. You can afford to play loose because you have nothing to lose. You're already up against the wall. So it's on. The pressure is fully on Miami's shoulders in Game 6. They have got all this weight and pressure for them to build off of, but I don't know if I can confidently pick Miami to win this game, Carson, and it's for all the reasons that I just laid out. It is going to take a hellacious effort defensively and on the glass and in all the hustle categories that we've seen Miami win throughout these playoffs. It is going to take Jimmy Butler giving this team somewhere between 35 to 40 points and being super efficient. It's going to take Miami against a great Celtics defensive attack, protecting the ball every possession, and that's the biggest thing to me that I don't know if we can count on Miami. Dude, Kyle Lowry can't even just, like, a serviceable point guard, right, can just hold on to the rock and make smart passes and, like, not force turnovers. Lowry couldn't even hold on to the ball tonight. If they pressured him, he was giving it up. He was making horrible passes. Like, even a guy like Gabe Vincent is just better at not just giving the ball up. Like, I don't even know if I trust Lowry as an initiator to just control the ball. So it's going to take them being a lot more engaged. It's going to take them protecting the rock. It's going to take superhuman Jimmy. It's going to take them shooting the lights out. And I just think they're really limited offensively without Gabe Vincent. And so I'm very worried. If I had to pick this game, again, momentum and everything considered, I would probably say that Boston forces this thing to 7, where we're going to see them need to finish this thing off on their home floor, or Miami finish this thing off in Boston. And again, like I said, I think another one of the biggest things, dude, is I thought we saw Boston really attack those mismatches that they have advantages in with all these great ball handlers who can get into the lane. That's something they need to continue to do, and I don't think Miami has an answer for that. I don't know, man. All the momentum's in on Boston, and I'm somehow with them too, bruh.
It's very interesting because I said before this series when we were giving our predictions that if I thought Boston was going to play their best game every single time out, I'd probably pick them to win in 4. And then obviously they fell down 3-0 and had completely quit, it seemed, on themselves in Game 3. And here they are. Now they effectively need a sweep, and it doesn't feel impossible that they could do it. And after Game 4 even, obviously they played better. They played with a lot more effort, which was big. But I wasn't convinced that they were going to come out and make the legitimate comeback push because Jalen still didn't look like the best version of himself. We didn't know at that point that Gabe Vincent was going to actually miss time, which I do think is pretty significant. So this is a game that Boston was supposed to win, right? Back on their own home floor, backs against the wall, but it certainly was convincing. So I agree with every key that you laid out for Miami, right? You need great Jimmy. You need aggressive Bam, who is dominating defensively, finishing aggressively around the rim, out of pick and roll, off the offensive glass, and also giving you some of that skilled shot making. You need your role players collectively to ball out. Caleb Martin, I trust, certainly. Max Strus has got to make big shots, I think. Duncan Robinson, I will say, has been so impressive,
right?
dude. Like, this game, I mean, he is running offense out of pick and roll at a high volume. We've seen more and more of those possessions sprinkled in there for him, but like legitimately good playmaking, good feel out of pick and roll, and obviously one of the most lethal pure shooters in basketball. It's just so awesome to see him getting minutes again and actually doing some damage with it. So I think they need good Duncan Robinson to lean on, but it does ultimately feel like this is in Boston's hands, right? Because if they play up to their potential, what can Miami really do, right? You mix zone in there and you hope to rattle Tatum as a playmaker or to force them in a lot of those, hey, just one pass, catch and shoot possessions where maybe they can get out of a rhythm and then they feed you in transition. Sure. But I don't know that there's a bunch of adjustments at this point that is going to throw this Boston team off. I think it's going to be a matter of them letting themselves down, not getting the best version of Tatum and Brown, having an off shooting night. Maybe they can't summon the same defensive level for another 2 games. But right now it does feel like they kind of hold the advantage in this series. But I don't know if I want to pick that, because I do think Jimmy Butler is the best player in this series, although this was the most tame, the most limited that we've seen him, I think, in any game in these playoffs. I thought that he struggled with Boston's length and was not overly aggressive in this game. And Boston is the ultimate roller coaster. And yeah, up to this point, they've been able to dig themselves out, but they've also given themselves margin, right? Like, sure, they play a terrible game 1 against Philly, but they're still up 2-1 in that series when they then lay a couple of bad performances. Atlanta, right? 2 dominant games, and then the rest of the way, those teams are pretty much even, but they had already built the margin. And in this series, it's the exact opposite. They have no margin. They have absolutely no room to play around. So even though I do think Boston is the better team, and I think Boston is playing clearly and definitively better right now, man, the Gabe Vincent injury does throw a bit of a wrench into things, because I'm like, that's a meaningful loss for a team that clearly needs more creation and offensive skill to hang here. But I don't know if I can bet on Boston again. I felt that they were out after 3 games. Obviously, they look like a different team right now. But it's just hard to keep leaning into getting bitten by the same snake, if you know what I mean. So I guess for now, I'll ride with Miami pulling it out. They don't look like the better basketball team, but Boston is just so wildly unpredictable night to night that betting on very good Boston for 4 straight games feels difficult to do.